Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this virtual hybrid planning committee meeting, 2nd of July 2020 at 6 o'clock. Hopefully it'll all go smoothly. If it doesn't, it's the technology's fault, not mine. Okay, if you're a member of the public and you've dialed in because you want to speak on a certain application, we will allow you 4 minutes. You can make your points, and at the end of the 4 minutes, I will wind you up. And our moderator, Dave Whelan, has got a stopwatch, and he will use it as he so sees fit. Okay, hopefully the technology will not fail us, so we should go sailing on through. I need to ask all members to confirm that they can see, hear and speak before the meeting begins. So I'm going to call your name alphabetically. First of all, I'm Councillor Caleb Tomlinson. I chair the Planning Committee meeting, and I represent Bamber Bridge West Ward. I would like to ask Councillor Will Adams to introduce himself, please.
Hi, I'm Councillor Will Adams. Hi, I'm Councillor Will Adams, and I represent Middlefirth in Penwortham. I hear you loud and clear, Chair.
Thank you, my NHS hero. Okay, Councillor Mal Donoghue, please.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Councillor Mal Donoghue, and I represent Seven Stars Ward, and I can hear you clearly.
And Councillor Mal Donoghue, for information, is the Vice Chair of the committee. Councillor James Flannery, please.
Thanks, Chair. Councillor James Flannery, representing Middlefirth, and I can hear you loud and clear. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Flannery. Councillor Mary Green.
Hello, Councillor Mary Green, Councillor for Moss Side and Midge Hall, and I can hear you clearly.
Thank you, Councillor Mary Green. Councillor John Hesker.
Councillor John Hesker, represent Longton and Hutton West.
Thank you, Councillor thank you, Councillor Hesker.
Fine.
Councillor Cliff Hughes.
Yeah, I'm here.
Councillor Keith Martin.
Thank you, Chair. I'm Councillor Keith Martin from Middlefirth area.
Short and sweet. Thank you, Keith Martin. Councillor Christine Mellier. Councillor Christine Melia.
Councillor Amelia, you'll need to unmute your microphone.
Hello, it's Christine Melia. I'm Councillor for Bamber Bridge East, and I can hear you, Caleb.
Thank you very much, Christine. You're looking very well. I've had apologies from Councillor Caroline Moon, so unfortunately she's a key worker, or fortunately for us. Councillor David Shaw.
Councillor David Shaw, representing Howercombe Priory in Penwortham. Thank you.
Thanks very much for that, Councillor Shaw. Councillor Phil Smith.
Councillor Phil Smith, representing New Longton and Hutton East, and I can hear you clearly, Chair. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Smith. Councillor Barry Yates.
Good evening, Chairman. Councillor Barry Yates, Salisbury and Waltons. I can hear you clearly.
Thanks very much, Councillor Yates. Okay, I will now introduce you to our officers. Jonathan Node.
Jonathan Node, Director of Planning and Property. I can hear you, Chair.
Thanks, Jonathan. Stephen Brown. Thanks, Stephen. Dave Whelan, Deputy Monitor and Officer.
Yes, Chair. I'm David Whelan, Shared Services Lead on Legal. I can hear you perfectly clearly.
Debbie Roberts. Thanks for that, Dave.
Debbie Roberts, Planning Officer, and yes, I can hear you, thank you. And Stephen Brown's to my right.
Linda Ashcroft. Sorry? Not attending, okay. She's on this list, that's all. Charlotte Lynch, Democratic Services Officer.
Yes, Chair.
Thanks for that. Okay, we've done the apologies already because Councillor Moon, as I say, is a key worker and she's been called out to work at the last minute. Do we have any declarations of interests on tonight's agenda, please? Dave Whelan, please.
Sorry, Chair. I was just thinking, I presume Councillor Hesketh will be declaring an interest in agenda item.
I'm speaking now. I don't think I was switched on quite right. John Hesketh on item 8, sorry. Did you got that?
Thanks, Councillor Hesketh.
Yeah, right.
Okay, have we all read the minutes of the last meeting? Councillor Phil Smith.
Yes, I've read them, Chair, and I approve them as a correct record.
Thanks very much for that, Councillor Smith. Do I have a seconder?
I'll second that, Chair.
I've already got one. Councillor Keith-Martin seconded. Do we have to go to the vote on that, Dave? Yeah, so can you all, when I shout your names, can you all vote on that? Councillor Will Adams?
Yes.
Councillor Mal Donoghue?
Yes.
Councillor James Flannery?
Yes, Chair.
Councillor Mary Green?
Yes, Chair.
Councillor John Hesketh?
Yes, Councillor Hesketh.
Councillor Cliff Hughes?
Yes,
Councillor Keith Martin?
Yeah, I agree with that, Chair.
Councillor Christine Melia?
Yes.
Councillor David Shaw?
Yes, thank you, Chair.
Councillor Phil Smith, obviously you've proposed, and Councillor Barry Yates?
Obviously, I agree.
Councillor Barry Yates?
Yes, Chair.
Thanks very much for that. Okay, I can sign them then. Okay, do we have any ill decisions? Jonathan?
Chair, there's no appeals to report at this meeting. The only thing to update committee on is the court case to do with the Wayne Homes site at Chain House Lane. We had the day in court just over 2 weeks ago. We spent most of the day in court, but both sides of the case were given a significant amount of time by the judge to explain the case. The judge does have other cases on. At the moment, he did say it would be a number of weeks before we got the written judgment. We have not seen it as yet, but I would expect it perhaps within the next week to 10 days. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Jonathan. Could be interesting. Okay, item number 6, we need to vote on the waiving of Standing Order 34.1. Committee need to vote on the waiver of Standing Order 34.1 of the Council's Constitution, which allows for up to 5 members of the public who wish to speak against an application and up to 5 members of the public who wish to speak in favour. As previously stated, alternative arrangements have been provided to allow up to 3 objectors and up to 3 supporters. I move the Standing Order 34.1 be waived for this meeting. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Keith Martin. Okay, we need to go to the vote on this one. I will call you out alphabetically to vote on the motion. Councillor Will Adams.
Yes, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Adams. Councillor Mal Donoghue.
Yes, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Donoghue. Councillor James Flannery.
Yes, Chair.
Councillor Mrs Mary Green.
Against, Chair.
Thanks, Councillor Mrs Green. Councillor John Hesketh. Councillor Hesketh.
Aye. Against.
Thank you. Councillor Keith Hughes. For. Councillor Keith Martin.
For that, Chair.
Councillor Christine Melia.
For.
Councillor David Shaw.
For.
Councillor Phil Smith.
For.
And Councillor Barry Yates.
For.
Okay, thank you all for that. Dave Whelan.
Yes, Chair, I have 9 for and 2 against.
Okay, thanks for that. That motion's carried. Item number 7, land at Oldfield and Long Meadow, Much Hoole. I will now pass you over to Debbie Roberts, who will begin her representation. Thank you, Debbie.
Mr. Hughes, speaking.
Is now joining.
Speaking, Mr. Hughes.
Mr. Hughes, you need to wait till you're asked.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, Debbie Roberts, if you'd like to present the application.
Thank you, Chair. Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. The site itself is a narrow strip of undeveloped land running north to south on the west of Oldfield and Long Meadow in Much Hoole. It's a 30 metre by 200 metre piece of land bordered with sparse hedgerow and sporadically placed trees. In the west are Oldfield and Long Meadow, 1970s chalet-style dwellings, and the rear gardens of houses on Liverpool Road. In the north is Knoll Lane and a roundabout with new build properties opposite, and the field access is along this northern boundary, and that will be used for construction traffic only. In the south are residential properties, and in the east is open land. For the last 2 local plans, this site's been allocated for village development. It hasn't at any point been protected from development. Okay, just a few photos of the site. This is the main access from through Malfield from Liverpool Old Road. Long Meadow is at the turning on the left, and Oldfield is on the right. Facing north, once we're onto the road in front of the site's on the right. We've got Long Meadow, which is a small cul-de-sac on the left. And facing south from the Malfield junction, we've got Oldfield properties on the right and the site's on the left. And this is the site view from the Knoll Lane roundabout and the field access gate along the northern boundary that I mentioned earlier. The proposal is for 14 accessible bungalows, garages and associated infrastructure for the over 55 age group. There will be 12 detached and 2 semi-detached, complementary house types in a style that respects the surroundings. Properties take a linear formation, access through Malfield. Plots 1 to 4 in the north would take a shared driveway off Long Meadow, and the rest of the plots would have independent driveways off Long Meadow and Oldfield. Between plots 8 and 9, there is an access to be retained to provide vehicle access into the field in the east. There will be supplementary landscaping throughout the site, but existing planting retained other than the hedge which will be removed to make way for driveways. 1 frontage tree around this area will be removed at the request of Lancashire County Council Highways. The council's arborist supports this, but because trees are difficult to establish along the highway, he's asked that trees aren't introduced onto the frontage as mitigation. Construction access will be through the northern gate, and we would secure that by condition. Okay, we've got proposed house types. As you can see, they're a complementary style and the materials mix, and they respect the surroundings. Proposed street scene visualisation. It is a linear development, but I can't get it all on one slide. The bottom row, there is a gap which maintains access into the eastern field. That will be roughly site centre, facing the Malfield access. And from a design perspective, the proposal respects the character of the wider area. Now, turning to the B2 village development site allocation, which is detailed very fully in the report. The site is protected by policy. Site's protected by policy B2 and the corresponding SPD for village development, where the development can't be accommodated in the existing village. It doesn't rank preferable uses, but expects applications to be supported by evidence to demonstrate local need and to show that there's no more preferable site in the area. The Central Lancashire Strategic Housing Market Assessment establishes that 3-bedroom bungalows and detached units are in most demand in the area, and that there is a local need for housing for ageing and disabled populations. So these 3-bedroom detached bungalows, which suit demand, would also be fully accessible and constructed in compliance with Part M of the building regulations, and that provides for access and mobility. When considering local need, however, members need to take into account the recent Olive Farm appeal, which was determined after adoption of the policy and the SPD. The appeal effectively refutes that need must be on a settlement rather than a wider local basis. So on that basis, on the basis of this case law, therefore, if the houses are approved, they shouldn't be tied to the mutual settlement only. In terms of relevant provision and need, then, subject to an age-related condition, and we're requesting 55, the scheme complies with policy B2 for village development. The applicants also demonstrated that there's no more preferable site in the area. Again, that's all detailed in your report. Separately, the local plan requires major development to include 35% of affordable housing. For specialist housing, this requirement is a proportion, not a percentage. The more recent 2019 NPPF, however, reduces this requirement to 10% with complete exemption for extra care and specialist accommodation. The report before you includes independent advice from 2 barristers who are clear that, subject to an age-related condition, the housing qualifies as specialist accommodation. As the classification has been established, there is no policy requirement on this site for affordable housing. Community infrastructure levy and a public open space contribution are payable, and they've been agreed with the applicant. We've had 26 letters of objection received as summarised, but no objection subject to conditions from the statutory consultees. So overall, the proposal complies with the local and national policy, and it's recommended, for approval with conditions, with a decision to be delegated to the Director of Planning and Housing, Chair and Vice Chair on successful completion of a legal agreement to secure a financial contribution towards public open space. Just one minor change with members' agreement. I'd like to change condition 3 from the dwelling should be restricted to occupancy by persons over the age of 55 only, to the occupation of the dwelling should be restricted to occupancy by persons over the age of 55 or the widow or widower of such a person. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thanks very much for that.
Yeah, thanks very much for that, Debbie. Okay, I have 3 registered objectors wishing to speak on this. I will bring you in as we have received them. So we have a Mr. Graham Yowett. Mr. Graham Yowett, can you hear us? You are there because you came in halfway through the presentation.
Mr. Ewart, you might need to unmute your microphone.
Okay, we'll come back to Mr. Ewart. Do we have a Mr. David Hughes there wishing to object to this application? Hello, Mr. Hughes.
Speaking, yes.
Thank you, Mr. Hughes. Do you have video capability or not?
I'm afraid not, no.
It doesn't matter, don't worry.
Okay.
Doesn't matter, don't worry. Yeah, thanks for attending this virtual meeting tonight. You've now got 4 minutes to explain to us what your objections are to this application. Okay? I'll let you know when your 4 minutes are up, all right?
Okay, thank you very much.
You're more than welcome.
Good evening, everyone. This is Mr. Hughes speaking. Here are my comments on this application. There seems to be a growing trend that any land that is allocated for village development under policy B2 is being met with non-compliance of the policy, especially now that B2 SPD clearly defines what constitutes local need. In the Strategic Housing Planning Application consultation on the 23rd of April, a senior officer stated that under the terms of policy B2 Village Development SPD, the council would expect to receive evidence to demonstrate local need for the purposes of any proposed development, and that a local housing needs survey hasn't been submitted as part of the current application. I put it to the members of the committee, have you seen such a survey that demonstrates a local need? The applicant is using the wider need to justify the development, but I can't see how you can endorse the wider need when it contradicts the response of the council's strategic housing officer. The applicant is also trying to justify the development by using the appeal decision made by the inspector for the land at Olive Farm, and to remind the committee, the supporting text of B2 SPD states quite clearly, a need within another settlement will not be considered acceptable. Olive Farm falls within another settlement. The refusal decision of 1976 relating to this protected strip of land included a statement that read in part, the proposal would be conducive to further similar applications which would be difficult to resist. And as this current application doesn't comply with B2 SPD, then those words will still apply some 44 years later. The applicant stated that Much Hoole Parish Council didn't respond with its views on the planning application, but I can assure you that I was in constant communication with the councillors, and their views are available to read on the South Ribble Public Access portal. There is an assumption of a growing demand for bungalows in general, and I would draw your attention to the development of the land off Swallowfield, Much Hoole, where there are 3 such properties that have been on the open market since February of this year. I've been in communication with the estate agent, Lawrence Rooney, and little interest has been shown in the bungalows, and at this moment in time they remain unreserved. Whilst the strip of land is allocated by the South Ribble Borough Council local plan as a site for village development under policy B2, the case officer's final report states in paragraph 2.2 application site and surrounding area that the land to the east is open green belt land, not what the case officer has just stated a few minutes ago. She referred to it as open land. I'll clarify again, open green belt land are her words. As such, why has the applicant been permitted to install a surface water management and a foul water discharge scheme outside the red edge boundary of the proposed site on that very green belt land? In conclusion, I consider this application to be a blatant manipulation of the policies of the local plan for the land that is safeguarded to meet local needs. With this in mind, I would urge the elected councillors to abide by their own policies and refuse this planning application on the grounds of a lack of evidence to demonstrate a local need. Thank you very much.
All right, thanks for that, Mr. Hughes. Mr. Graham Ewart, are you with us?
Louise Parkinson
is now joining.
Okay, do we have a Mrs. Daniels?
Graham Yowett.
Oh, Graham, right, okay, Graham Yowett.
Is now exiting.
Exiting. Mr. Yowett, are you there? No, okay. Do we have a Mrs. Daniels who wishes
Yes.
to speak? Good evening,
Mrs.
Mrs. Daniels.
Daniels.
Good evening,
Good
Mrs.
evening.
Daniels. Do you have video capability or not?
Yes, I do.
If you'd like to use it, you're quite welcome to.
Right, thank you.
Okay.
I've prepared the draft, so I'd like to take notes from that.
Yes, that's fine, Mrs.
Okay.
Daniels. Okay, we've got 4 minutes. I'll let you know when your 4 minutes are up if you use them. Okay? Thank you.
Unknown participant is now joining.
I live at 17 Long Meadow with my husband, which is the most effective house if these plans go ahead. We purchased our house not for the design, but for its location. If we had wanted a house on a through road, we would have bought one, but we didn't due to my husband having asthma and health issues. It's also worth pointing out that I am a cancer survivor with a low immune system. We bought and chose to live with a no-through road, which reduces car emissions and traffic noise. Now the plan is to wrap our house with concrete and a private drive for other cars, going full length of our property. By doing this, it will expose every part of our life, by loss of privacy and impact on our health, so much so as cars will now come down the road and turn into the end of our drive, taking away not only our privacy, but any space for visitors to park or family to park. Our son lived in one of these shared drives, which is in Mucktool, and there were so many arguments between neighbours over parking, he moved out of the village. They do not work. Malfield Mucktool is already a single road due to parked cars and is a danger spot. Many times we have had to reverse back as a car is turning into Malfield, blocking the route ahead. This plan now wants to bring farm vehicles down Malfield as well. It is extremely dangerous. The report says there has been no reported accident. We say there have been many. 3 bad ones in the last 12 months. We have proof in photographs that the air ambulance has landed in the field, and that day a family's life was altered forever. Each accident was caused by cars being parked and cars overtaken. On the day, people were sat in traffic jams for over 2 hours trying to get into the village, and this happens on a regular basis. All evidence is continually being ignored. The report says there's no wildlife. They have done a survey. You cannot do a survey with a 10-minute walk in a field. We have the evidence. If owls, sparrowhawks and other birds of prey are constantly in the field, that is evidence that they are feeding, hence the birds in the hedgerows and the voles. We have shell ducks, which have visited each year and mated, and this is over the past 6 years. They're an endangered list. Many birds have nested in the hedgerows, and you want to take down the hedgerows, and an English ash tree, which we have seen bats flying in. There is also hedgehogs there. Regarding flooding, I have sent some of you proof of our garden floods every year, sometimes 3 or 4 times a year. The solution that the plan suggests we feel is inadequate and not a solution for the existing houses. We still want to know the results of the cancer traces taken from the field, as this is a major concern to us all. Out of 7 houses, 16 of us have had cancer. There is 4 survivors. I am one of them. For many years, old rusty barrels were rot and seeped into the soil that were left in the field. We want to know what was in them. If these plans are passed, our lives will alter. Ask yourselves, would you want this? There are plenty of places to go and should not impact on other lives. And I thank you all for listening to me, and I hope you take on board our worries.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Daniels. Thank you. Let's go here, man. You're muted again.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks, Mrs. Daniels. Do we have a Mr. Graham Hewitt there?
Yes, I am here. You actually muted me. I didn't mute you.
I can't mute you. It's impossible. I'm sorry.
Well, somebody did.
Well, it wasn't me.
Anyway.
So would you like to make your presentation?
Yes. I've
Thank you.
been a resident of Longmeadow since 1971. This is a collection of 7 homes based on 3 sides of a square, and the residents normally stop in this area for a long time. I was given to understand that a small trace of cancer was found in the field, but no further information was made available to us. It was at this stage I got to think about the number of people from this location that had died of cancer. When we first moved into Longmeadow, in this field near to the field entrance on Knoll Lane, there were a quantity of barrels scattered in the corner. They contained liquid, we have no idea of which. 5 or 6 young people from the area very often used to play in this area around these barrels. 2 of these people have died with brain tumours, one of whom was my son. Over the years, the barrels corroded away, allowing the liquid to seep into the ground. We have a photograph of these barrels, if that's being disputed. Since that time, houses in Longmeadow and the 2 of the same type that are adjoining to us, there have been 16 cases of cancer to residents or past residents, 4 of whom are still alive. 11 are deceased, 1 person I don't know about. 2 of the cases involve my family, my eldest son who passed away, and my wife who thankfully is still alive, as are 2 other ladies and 1 gentleman. 11 deaths in total, rather too many for comfort. I personally knew every one of those people. Just take a moment, sit back and think of your neighbours and former neighbours. I very much doubt any of you will get anywhere near to this total of people dying from cancer. Why in such a small area have there been so many cases and deaths? This land needs further investigation before being allowed to be developed upon. If we go to the other end of the road, Oldfield, where there are 8 homes and have a similar demographic profile, there have only been 2 deaths from cancer. There is access from another gateway in Knoll Lane into this field rather than going through Marlfield, but that's been conveniently being closed down as the pond has been filled in. I wish to say all this has taken place under the coronavirus lockdown, and we appear to have been obstructed in every way by council officials to have the meeting deferred so that the 26 objectors could have the opportunity to get together. So much for democracy. Thank you very much for listening.
Yeah, thanks for that, Mr. Hewitt. I just advise all committee members to disregard that last remark.
Right, that's fair enough.
Thank you.
That's fair enough.
Okay, thanks very much.
Yeah, thank you. Bye.
I'd like to bring Debbie Roberts back in now on this, please.
Thank you, Chair. Highways issues and ecology.
Unknown participant is now exiting.
Has been raised as a problem, but the assessments that have been submitted with the application have been assessed by professional highways engineers and ecologists on behalf of the council and are considered acceptable. I can't comment on the flooding issue because I haven't seen the photographs that apparently have been sent to other people. But with regards to contaminated land, it's standard practice to put a contaminated land condition on should this application be approved. And if you note on your report, condition number 5 requires pre-commencement contaminated land assessment of the scheme and any relevant mitigation that might be needed. Just one thing that I'd like members to know: we do consider it to be compliant with policy. Mr. Hughes mentioned the B2 SPD, and he's right in saying that there is it does mention local need for these properties. But what you've got to take into account is the later Olive Farm decision, which overrides that remit. So these properties shouldn't be tied to the Poole constituency. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thanks for that, Debbie. Can everybody still hear me? Did you hear? Yeah. Okay, great. Thanks for that. Councillor John Rainsbury is the ward councillor. Is he going to speak? Or,
He's not, no.
He's not.
He's asked me to read out his statement.
Louise Parkinson.
Is now exiting.
He's asked you to read a statement. Okay. Okay, if you'd like to, he's got every... Yeah, go on.
As Ward Councillor for Hoole, I wish to make the following representations regarding the above planning application. I have not been able to listen to the residents' representations, so apologise for any duplication. The residents have expressed concerns that as this application process has continued through lockdown, the residents have been unable to arrange adequate representations. On Oldfield alone, the average age of the residents is circa 72 years. Many do not have the equipment, technical know-how or wherewithal to take part in the virtual meeting process and have been unable to meet as a group to prepare representations. They feel, therefore, this process is flawed and undemocratic, and we ask the committee to defer this application to allow more time for residents to prepare and arrange their case. The application for this development has been refused on 3 previous occasions and should be refused again. One of the reasons for refusal was the proposal would be conducive to further similar applications, which would be difficult to resist, thereby prejudicing the planning authority in securing well-planned development. Nothing has changed. The proposed development is on land allocated as B2, which allocates and safeguards land such as this proposed site development, which cannot be accommodated within the existing built-up area of the village. It is for the needs of the settlement. Much Hoole has circa 950 houses/bungalows and terrace properties. The facilities include 1 public house, 1 small grocery shop, a village hall and 2 cemeteries. There is a new residence for 51 people of mature age. There is no need in Much Hoole for further development, taking away yet more green space. The B2 Village Development SPD states that one of the major issues in rural settlements is the availability of a range of houses. Whilst the proposal sits within the specialist housing bracket, there is no identified need in Much Hoole for such a development. Whilst the Olive Farm development appeal was determined after SPD, it only states that the need may, and I repeat, may be on a borough-wide basis, not will be. It therefore cannot be taken as a precedent. As such, this application should be refused. Flooding. Residents are disappointed and amazed that there is no mention of the regular flooding that occurs on Oldfield, Longmeadow, Acre Grove and Knoll Lane. As recently as February 2020, the area suffered serious flooding. The rear of 17 Longmeadow flooded to within inches of the back door and the bottom of Oldfield backing onto Acre Grove, badly flooded. These are not one-off events. One resident informed me that she produced photographic evidence to a planning officer, only to be told by a planning officer that it was too late for them to be considered. What is the rationale for that? This seems to imply that it is awkward information that should not be seen by the committee. Further on flooding, the proposed water drainage tank and pumping station are outside the red line in another field. Is this in Greenbelt? What are the plans should the secret agreement fail? There is major concern regarding a proposed access to the site via Marlfield crossing both Longmeadow and Oldfield. This will bring heavy agricultural machinery and an increase in traffic through this narrow lane, causing danger and nuisance. There is a gate on Knoll Lane currently used for access, and it would not be beyond the wit of man to move the access to Knoll Lane. To conclude, in view of the above and the representations made by residents, I implore the committee to look at this proposal for what it is, an unnecessary development in a small settlement which is not required. There is no local, and I suggest borough need for, which just further erodes the rural aspects of the borough. Should this application be approved, it will cause serious upset, upheaval and a major change to the lives of what is generally an older population of long-standing residents in their latter years. I ask the committee to be mindful of the above and in the first instance refuse this application or to defer this application for further consideration and representation. Thank you all for listening. Councillor John Rainsbury.
Very much for that, Charlotte.
You need to unmute.
Thanks, Councillor Rainsbury. I know you can't hear me. Find it really
Caleb, you're on mute.
Okay, thanks for that, Charlotte. And thanks, Councillor Rainsbury, for your detailed objection. I just find it really, really sad that people using COVID-19 as a finger-pointing tool really upsets me, and it should upset
Mr.
everyone.
Hughes.
Is now exiting.
I'd like to bring back in Debbie Roberts, please.
Thank you. Just to clarify a few points, I I'd like to confirm again that I haven't seen any of the flooding photographs and that I haven't spoken to Mrs. Daniels or told her that flooding wasn't an issue. But the flooding assessment that I take on this site is based upon information from Lancashire County Council's history of flooding database. They record flooding where they've had to go onto the site and they've had to deal with a major issue, not minor floods, not occasional floods. These are recorded floods. There is no recorded history of flooding on this site. Drainage into the other piece of land is a civil matter, but I can confirm that we've seen a signed legal agreement between all parties that allows for drainage onto the land beyond. It's not visible, it's not online because it's a private agreement, but I can confirm that it exists. And finally, the application, I need to correct Councillor Ainsbury. The application hasn't been refused 3 times. It's been refused once, and it was refused in 1977, which is 43 years ago. I would suggest things have changed a little bit since then. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thanks for that, Debbie. Any members of the public who've joined the meeting, can you mute your microphones, please? Because I'm getting a lot of feedback in me right here. Okay, do we have the agent, Mr. Matthew Wyatt, who would like to speak on this application?
I'm here, if you can hear me.
We can hear you, Mr. Wyatt, and we can actually see you as well. Good evening.
Good evening.
If you'd like to, you've got 4 minutes to put forward your case. Thanks.
Thank you. I'm really surprised by some of the comments we've just heard from residents and councillors about there not being a need for a development of this type. And I think a key point I'd like to make about this scheme, which isn't really borne out in the report, but it's not that it won't just be subject to a condition which limits the occupation to the over 55 age group, but the proposed bungalows are designed specifically to comply with Part M4(2) of building regulations. And this is normally an optional requirement which ensures that both internally and externally the homes can be adapted for the changing needs of older age and disability. It includes, for example, increased circulation space within wider corridors that are capable of accommodating wheelchairs, bathrooms that are of a size that can easily be adapted into wet rooms, electrical controls, window and door handles that are accessible for wheelchair users. Externally, the driveways are all wide enough to enable a wheelchair user to exit the car, and all paths and drives have shallow gradients, so it's easy to gain access in poor weather, or also undertake tasks like doing a bit of gardening or taking the bins out. I could go on, but fundamentally the intention is that these buildings are constructed to a standard that allows occupants to be able to live independently and confidently, whatever their own personal need. As an optional requirement, there's no existing national or local planning policy basis for developers to have to build these types of homes, and I would very much encourage members to see these dwellings as a specialist type of housing that will deliver a community benefit. We just heard from the councillor that the average age of people in the locality is 72, so I'm surprised that there isn't a need that these wouldn't be seen as a positive in the area. In fact, we feel this is exactly the type of housing the council's hoping to secure on land such as this, which has the local plan policy allocation under policy B2. Soon after we submitted these proposals, and the council did actually publish the Central Lancashire Housing Study in late March. I think this is particularly relevant because in relation to age and disability, the headlines of this independently commissioned council report was that Central Lancashire is actually projected to see a very notable increase in the older person population, with sort of people turning over the age of 65 by about 39% over the next 20 years. Subsequently, the number of people with illnesses and disabilities is expected to increase significantly, and the figures in the report anticipate an increase in the number of people with mobility problems in this age band by 53%, which is quite massive. The report authors recommend that it would be sensible to design more housing that can be adapted to meet households' changing needs. So, taking account this very recent evidence, they actually recommend that a third of all new housing is delivered to this particular standard, which is accessible and adaptable under Part M42. So it could be some time before local and national policies actually require new housing schemes to have a proportion of these types of adaptable homes to meet the needs of older people. And I very much hope that the application is therefore sort of accepted and welcomed by the committee. I think I haven't got much time left, but I would just like to touch on the point that was made about cancerous substances. And obviously, it's very sad to hear the stories, but there are conditions requiring investigation and remediation of the land. We have actually done that study, and cancerous traces of asbestos fibres, small, were found in the ground. But as I said, the report actually now requires us to undertake appropriate remediation as part of that. So I would hope that is seen as another benefit to locals who are very concerned about this matter. My 4 minutes is well and truly up, but I can field any more questions you have. Thank you.
Okay, thanks for that, Mr. Wyatt. Debbie, anything else to add before I bring this into committee? No. Okay, I will bring this into committee. If you join virtually, if you can press your raise hand button if you wish to speak, I can then bring you in.
Chairman, I haven't got a raised hand button.
You have, Councillor Yates.
No,
if you press the right hand top of your screen, a pop-up box should come up.
No, it doesn't,
No.
Chair. But can you put me down to speak anyway?
Would you like to speak, Councillor Yates?
Yeah, if you put me on the list, Chair.
I'll bring you in straight away, Councillor Yates.
Right, thank you, Chairman.
You're welcome.
Just a few comments that I need answering from the officer.
Yeah.
I've always looked at it. B2 land is a local need, but we need to demonstrate what that need is. And each application should be taken on its own merit. We shouldn't be fetching other applications in, like Olive Farm. Olive Farm was a complete separate application, which was completely different than this one. And the difficulty I have with using other applications on B2 land is that we endanger ourselves for other B2 land to be used up across the borough, where the reasoning for the inspector's report, we all know, was inaccurate, and we should have really challenged that. So that's one that I'd like answering. LCC asked for a footpath for the full length to the front of the properties. Is that going to happen? Is that going to be implemented? The other one is, the third one is, why have we not got the opinion of the parish council? Because I haven't seen any opinion of the parish council. We got residents saying, well, I think it was a parish councillor saying that they had wrote in, and the fourth one is, can we share the evidence now at this meeting for the need? I do understand that this land, this B2 land that we're looking at, is B2 land and it's for special needs. I just want to know, make sure that we have the evidence for the special needs. Thank you, Chairman.
Thanks, Councillor Yates. I'll fetch Debbie Roberts in first, and then I will be inviting Councillor John Hesketh to speak.
Thank you, Chair. With regard to the footpath, Councillor Yates, yes, the footpath will be installed. There's one tree in the way, and that tree will come out at the request of county, so that they don't have to circumvent it with a footpath. In terms of B2 need, the strategic housing market assessment notes that we need 3-bedroom bungalows in this location. There is an established local need for this type of property in this location. And regardless of whether we like the fact or not, Olive Farm decision establishes case law, which we need to take into account. And that case law does say that it shouldn't be a local need, but a wider local need. Parish Council responds. I haven't had a Parish Council response from the Parish Council. I don't know if one has been sent, and I've missed it, but I checked today. I went through all the representation to make sure I picked everything up, and I haven't seen one. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thanks for that, Debbie.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Debbie, for that response.
Okay, Councillor Yates, thanks. Councillor John Hesketh.
Right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. As I see it, this is a development on safeguarded land, which is really for community use. Actually, under the heading of village development, it would come under that consideration. But then I was rather saddened to hear from the officers that the condition does not restrict to just local need, but it is a wider one. And on numerous occasions, we've had people that have come from outside areas to fill spaces. Also, what do we do if, just for argument's sake, there are 14 units on that site, and say 8 of them are taken by local people? What do we do with the other 4? I think that's something that we have to take into consideration. Also, the developer does seem to have covered the flooding situation, but I thought I'd heard somewhere along the line, and is this true, that the developer is responsible for perpetuity as far as their drainage is concerned on a site? And also, finally, as a landowner myself, I rather am worried in connection with the land on the east side of the site, because I can see quite well that there will be problems arising when people, well, occupiers of that land, are actually collecting crops or moving livestock, ferrying it from one site to another. So I do feel that entrance is rather not in my not as I would like it to be. And is it not possible, perhaps, to have an access off Knoll Lane for that particular land that is on the east side? I think that covers most of my points, Mr. Chairman. I will keep my decision to see. I'll see what other people have to say first. Right, thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Hesketh. Debbie, would you like to come in response?
Yes, thank you, Chair.
I think you're muted.
No, I'm not. Yeah,
I can hear you now.
Yeah. Okay. Drainage. The responsibility of this planning application is to make sure that these houses can drain in an efficient and appropriate manner. As I mentioned earlier, there is a legal agreement in place with the landowner of the eastern parcel of land to allow for that, but that's something that to be secured by condition, and we'll work through that if these are approved at a later date by discharging that condition. Use of the field itself really isn't anything to do with this committee, but the landowner is aware, because she has signed that legal agreement, she is aware of what's going on, and she is aware that drainage will be on that site. If she wants to open up an entrance onto Knoll Lane to get into that site, she is welcome to supply an application for something like that, but it's not something that we can do on the back of this application. The red edge for this application doesn't stretch that far, and it isn't relevant. That's it. Thank you, Chair.
All right, thanks for that, Debbie. Councillor Yates, did you want to come back?
Sorry, Chair, could you?
I'll bring you in. I will bring you in after Councillor Yates, Mrs. Green. Councillor Mrs. Green.
Thank you. It's not working, the button.
Right, thank you, Chairman. After what the explanation that Debbie's given me for this application, I can see that it is B2 land. It has got special needs. All B2 land in South Ribble is held for just for such occasions where we look for special needs, and there is a need for bungalows in this area that accommodate elderly people. So we're taking that all into consideration, Chair. I'd like to move approval on this application.
Okay, thanks for that, Councillor Yates. So you're moving approval. Councillor Mrs. Green. Councillor Mrs.
Yes, Chair,
Green.
sorry about that.
It's
Yeah,
okay,
sorry,
don't worry.
Chair, the button's
Don't worry.
not working. So
It's okay, don't worry.
Right, okay. Yeah, I have a lot of sympathy for the residents. Obviously, their lives are going to be changed. They're not going to have an outlook over fields. They're going to be looking at other houses. But on saying that, these houses are being built, I feel, in a good way. They've got a distance of a road between. They look quite a nice type that fits in with the area. One concern I have got is that I don't feel that the fields should have normal remedial checkups before they build. I feel that with this discussion about illness and cancer, we need some special remediation features put on that land before we start building, obviously for the existing residents and for the future residents that are going to be living on that land. So perhaps that could be put into the conditions that we've got a special remediation checkup to be done before we start building. On saying all that though, the problem I think of traffic, it says in the report, if I'm not mistaken, that there's only 4 garages being built. Therefore, they're not expecting a great excess of traffic that's coming from this development. It's only a small development. So I wouldn't have thought that that would have caused a lot of problems for traffic. And I agree with Councillor Yates completely that this housing for over 55s is a type of housing that we need all across the borough in different areas. We're very, very short of this type of housing. And unfortunately, fortunately in one way, the population is growing older and living longer. But in itself, that does cause problems and we need to address that problem. So I think it's quite a good application, this, and I feel quite positive towards it. Thank you.
Okay, thanks for that, Councillor Mrs. Green. Councillor Will Adams.
Thanks, Chair. I think this committee have been on here for quite a number of months now. And there's one thing that always comes up, and that's our housing need and the high demand for bungalows within the borough. I think that's quite well documented in the report. I think the report is quite substantial in many different areas. I think it's quite clear from my personal opinion that it's policy compliant. And for that reason, I will second approval for this. Thanks, Chair.
Okay, Councillor Adams, thanks very much for that. So we have a proposal and a seconder. Do we have any other councillors wishing to speak? Councillor Phil Smith.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. A couple of queries I have. First of all, there's been quite a few references to case law. It might be an answer that might need from our legal representative, Dave Whelan. As far as I can recall, case law is something that needs to be determined in a court of law, not by a planning inspector. Could I just have an answer to that before I go on?
Certainly, Councillor Smith. Councillor Dave Whelan, please.
Yes, Councillor Smith. I'm not quite sure the reference, but yeah, as a general point of view, what's referred to as case law are decisions of, by definition, of other courts. Now, Councillor Yates, sorry, are you hearing me okay? Councillor Yates was referring earlier to another appeal decision. Councillor Yates is completely right that each planning case should be determined on its own merits, but some planning decisions do establish questions of principle and rules of interpretation, and that's the case in the Olive Farm case. Thank you, Councillor.
Thanks, David. Councillor Smith?
Yeah, thank you, David. I thought that was the case, that case law is not devolved by a planning inspector. B2 policy is an important policy for this council, as all policies are important for this council. Otherwise, we might as well not sit in this room if we're not interpreting the policies in the right way and giving our views on those particular policies. This policy has been recently reviewed, and it's been reviewed for a very good reason, that the council, as in the planning officers and councillors, thought this was a good idea to actually strengthen that policy to protect those various areas of B2 land. I could go back quite a long way with regard, only a few years, I have to say, not 30 or 40 years, but only a teens of years, with regard to previous applications on B2 land. Two identical pieces of land, virtually identical pieces of land, you couldn't tell the difference between them, only 100 yards apart in my ward at New Longton. That was an application that was fought by the local councillors and by local residents. And both of those were actually turned down. Another one came back and was turned down, I think, a second time for a different application. Both these applications actually went to a planning inspector. They happened to be different planning inspectors. One planning inspector overruled the decision and the other found in favour of the council. So if we want to use that as case law, I think it probably just complicates the matters quite a lot. And if we want to use that as history to judge what we're doing in this council with regard to B land, it really does complicate the issue. I have several other issues. I mean, that's just a point for other councillors, and I think we do need to take this B2 land seriously. Saying that, I do think this looks, on the basis of the housing or the bungalows that are being put forward, look decent bungalows, and if we can prove that there is a need, that obviously helps the matters. One thing that I don't like with regard to this application is the access to this field. I think it's been pointed out by Councillor Hesketh. It would be very, very easy to get access to the pieces of land behind it through another gateway through a field, closing off that access to the field and alleviating some of the residents' concerns with regard to tractors, trailers, various farm equipment going up and down there. I know what it's like when they come down our lane with the big silage trucks and they're in and out picking silage up, back and two. It is quite very, very noisy and quite harrowing, to be quite honest. And for that reason alone, I think I would probably be minded to not to approve this application. I don't know. I'll wait and see what other people say. But if there was a way of closing that access, I think that would ease my conscience quite a bit, and I think it would help the residents that live in the area. And that's what I have to say for now, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Smith. I'll bring Debbie in again on that point, if I may.
Well, it's up to members to decide to consider the proposal that's put before us. We're not here to design the scheme, and if you wish to defer it while we take that away to the applicant, that's within your gift. But in policy terms, this application is acceptable. In design terms, it's acceptable. And I would be hard pushed to have it refused on those grounds. just separately, while I'm on, the contaminated land condition that Councillor Mary Green mentioned earlier, I just confirm that it's really, really tightly worded, as is the mitigation wording in there. We couldn't get it any tighter if we wanted to. So I think if approved, this site, once it's remediated, will be acceptable. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thanks for that, Debbie. Do we have any other members of the committee with any other proposals or wishing to speak on this application? No? Well, we've had a proposal of approval and we have had a seconder for the approval. And I think it's time we went to the vote on this application. Okay, so if we could go to the vote, it's for approval. Okay, we're going to do it by roll call. Councillor Will Adams.
Approval, Chair.
Councillor Malcolm Donoghue.
Approval, Chair.
Thanks, Councillor Donoghue. Councillor James Flannery.
For, Chair.
Councillor Mrs Mary Green.
For, Chair.
Councillor John Hesketh.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would go for a deferral, Mr. Chairman, and have more information on that access that goes through the site.
So are you now saying you want a deferral?
Yes.
Is that a proposal?
Yes, it is, yes.
Right, okay. So Councillor Hesketh is proposing. Right. We're going to have to go back now, aren't we?
Yeah.
Sorry, Chair. If I could...
you certainly can, Dave.
I mean, essentially, Councillor Hesketh is voting no for the proposal. So I suggest, no alternative motion has been put forward.
Yeah.
Councillor Hesketh is, in effect, voting no for the proposal. So I suggest we proceed on that basis.
Okay.
Remember that.
All right, thanks, David. So John Hesketh is against. Councillor Cliff Hughes. For. Councillor Keith Martin.
Approval, Chair.
Thanks, Councillor Martin. Councillor Christine Melia.
Approval, Chair.
Thanks, Councillor Melia. Councillor David Shaw.
For, Chair.
Thanks, Councillor Shaw. Councillor Phil Smith.
Against, Chair, and I think the system doesn't probably allow us to get back in quickly enough. I realise what David's saying, but sometimes there's a bit of a hesitation in the system and it doesn't allow us to come back in quick enough to make an alternative proposal. But on that basis, I'll vote against anyway. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Smith. Councillor Barry Yates.
For, Chair.
Thanks, Councillor Yates. And my vote, I am also for the application. Okay, Dave Whelan, can you confirm the vote, please?
Yes, Chair. There were 10 votes for, 2 against. So the decision is that the matter be approved, subject to entering into the relevant legal agreement.
Right. Okay. Thanks for that, Dave. Okay, let's move on to item number 8, Ribble Kern Farm, Skip Lane, Hutton. And I'd like to invite Stephen Brown to present this item, please. Thanks, Stephen. I'm sorry?
Raise a point of order.
Yes.
Obviously, Councillor Hesketh is the owner of this property, but he's still on the screen. Normally, they would leave the meeting. Is there a system for that, or would it be acceptable in this position to allow him to continue to listen?
Through you, Chair, what Councillor Hesketh should do now is leave the meeting and then... Oh, he's out. Apparently, he's left the meeting, so we can proceed. Yeah. We'll just need to bring him back in after this issue.
Okay, once again, I will invite Stephen Brown to present the item.
Yes, thank you, Chair. So this application relates to Ribblecairn Farm, which is at the very head of Skip Lane. There are no further properties beyond it on the access track. The proposal is to convert the existing structure that you see on the screen before you, removing the lean-to structure to the side. It will be reclad in certain areas and will utilise the existing dwarf blockwork wall. So just looking at some of the views of the building, side and end view there. Internally, it will be converted, as you see, to form a 3-bed dwelling, utilising the exact same floor space, with the exception of the area, the farm office, as you see at the bottom of the building, which is to be removed. Externally, reclad as appropriate to the walls in timber and sheeting to the roof. New openings as appropriate, retaining the blockwork and painting that. So this is an agricultural determination, so it's permitted development subject to satisfying the local authority on a number of points, namely transport and highway impact, noise impact, contamination risk, flood risk, is this an appropriate location for the development, and the design and external appearance of the building. All of these points have been assessed, and it's your officer's view that the proposal is satisfactory and no further details are required. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Coral. Okay, thanks for that, Stephen. We've no registered speakers on this application. There's no members not on committee wishing to speak on this application. So I can bring it straight into committee. Councillor Keith Martin, please.
Thank you, Chair. Obviously, an outbuilding on a farm needs permission to be developed, as we've seen in recent history in the news. So I would go for approval with this. Thank you.
Councillor Phil Smith.
Yes, Chair. I'm not quite sure what. Well, I'm sure what it's what we are asked to do, but I will go with the officer's recommendation, Chair.
Thanks, Councillor Smith. Councillor Barry Yates.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. Just a question. Nothing against the application, but we're always looking at Greenbelt and looking at it. If the buildings are going to be demolished, it is not now a new building in Greenbelt and not a conversion. Because I'm looking at our policy, that's all. The policy in our Greenbelt is said that we don't allow new build. But I just want to make sure so that everybody out there that's listening in knows that we're going along with our policy.
Thanks for that, Councillor Yates. Stephen Brown, would you like to reply to that?
Yeah, this is a conversion. When I was talking about demolition, it was demolition of the lean-to. The main structure will remain and be reclad as I described. Part Q is a development situation whereby the works don't need planning permission, they just need a determination, and within that determination the necessary recladding, re-roofing, etc. is permissible. So basically it just needs to come to us with the details, and we've got 56 days in which to respond as to whether any further details are required. So this isn't a normal conversion in terms of a conversion of a Greenbelt building. This is a Part Q determination, which is a permitted development right that was given to farmers probably 4 or 5 years ago now, to assist in them getting residential properties on the farm, largely to assist with the working of the farm fundamentally. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks for that, Stephen. Councillor Yates, you want to come back in on that? And then I want Councillor Mrs Green after that.
Right. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Stephen, for explaining that. I just thought it needed to be explained, seeing that we're on webcast. Okay, thank you.
Councillor Mrs Green.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'm a little bit puzzled as well as Councillor Yates, because if somebody could explain or clarify this class Q of the town and country planning, how does that effectively overrule the normal sort of bog standard rule that is agricultural buildings are allowed, but not housing on a green belt, which in the report it states that this land is clearly a washed over green belt. Could you just explain the difference to me? Because to be quite honest with you, I've not heard about this class Q before. So if you could explain, it would aid in future thoughts about this. Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Thanks, Councillor Green. Stephen, if you'd like to come back with that one.
Yeah, as I said earlier, it was a class that was introduced to fundamentally assist farmers, particularly where they were looking for accommodation on their sites and potentially there wasn't any available in the area. So basically it says if there's a structure there that's capable of conversion within a certain amount of work, then it is possible, but it is only a benefit given to where there's an existing farm and an existing farm business. So a person couldn't just go out into the green belt and acquire a building and then say, I'll convert it under Part Q. There has to be proven business already in operation. So it's a pretty strict and narrow area where this benefit is possible. Thank you, Chair.
So
thanks for that, Stephen. Of course you can,
Councillor.
You can, Councillor Mrs Green.
Thank you. So therefore you're saying, just for clarity, not just for this application, for any future ones, it mostly applies to people who are already living in that property, not for someone to just go and buy that agricultural building on that land and then knock it down and build a house on it. This is purely and simply for a farmer or somebody already living in that premises to improve the premises for their living standards.
Yes, that's fundamentally the situation. And the existing agricultural business, they're already involved in it, and then they benefit from this right to do the conversion. A third party couldn't just come along and buy a building in the green belt to do it if they weren't involved or there wasn't an existing business there.
Right. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Councillor Yates, did you want to come back?
No, I'm okay, Chair. Thank you.
Okay. Any other members of committee wishing to speak on this? Well, I have a proposal for approval. Do I have a seconder anywhere?
I'll second that, Chair.
Thanks. Councillor Smith had already seconded Councillor Yates. Thanks for that. So I have a proposal for approval from Keith Martin, Councillor Keith Martin, seconded by Councillor Phil Smith. Do I have any other proposals? Okay, well, we'll go to the vote then. I'll call out once again each member individually. Councillor Will Adams.
For approval, Chair.
Thanks, Councillor Adams. Councillor Mal Donoghue.
Yes, for approval, Chair.
Councillor James Flannery.
For, Chair.
Councillor Mrs Mary Green.
Approval, Chair.
Councillor John Hesketh. Oh, no, sorry. Councillor Cliff Hughes. Councillor Keith Martin.
Not being one who make a proposal then go against it, I approve.
Touche. Councillor Christine Melia.
Approval, Chair.
Councillor David Shaw.
For.
Councillor Phil Smith.
Approval, Chair.
And Councillor Barry Yates.
Approval, Chair.
Thanks, Councillor Yates. And my own vote is approval. Dave, could we have the count, please?
Yes, Chair, that's a unanimous vote. All 11 members who could vote voted for it.
Okay, thanks very much. Is John Hesketh rejoining us? Yes. Okay, lovely. Okay, item number 9 on the agenda is 80 Stanleyfield Lane, Harrington. I'm going to invite Stephen Brown to present the item in front of us. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yeah, so the application property is at the junction of Stanleyfield Lane with Bristol Avenue on the corner position in the terrace of 4 properties, as you can see on the screen. There is parking forecourt to the front that's capable of accommodating probably 3 cars, and a single garage to the rear. There are parking bays on the opposite side of Stanleyfield Lane, which are restricted to 1 hour between 7 a.m. Monday to Saturday. Bristol Avenue itself is restricted access. So just looking, that's the existing external appearance of the property, and that's the side elevation. So the proposal is a change of use from an A1 shop to an A5 hot food takeaway selling traditional English breakfasts, jacket potatoes, paninis, salads, hot and cold food, drinks, etc. A new shop front is proposed. As you can see on the screen, the shop front will be central within the front elevation with a ramp serving it. And then there's an existing doorway to the right-hand side, which will serve what's an existing flat at first floor, which is currently 1 bed and will be now made into 2 bed. In terms of material issues, obviously there's the highways and parking situation. Lancashire County Council highways don't raise objection. As I've said, there's parking on the forecourt and restricted parking on the other side of the road. And the relationship to surrounding uses, whilst bearing in mind the lawful use of the premises as an A1 shop. And we do understand that historically the shop has been used for a variety of uses, including a one-time and off licence. Environmental Health and County Highways have raised no objection, and please note in the report the limited opening hours with no evening use. So they're proposing 7:30 till 3 p.m. Monday to Friday, 7:30 to 2 p.m. on Saturdays, and no Sundays or bank holidays openings. And Environmental Health's no objection is on the basis of a condition imposing those conditions. So therefore, it's the officer's view on balance that the proposal is acceptable subject to the recommended conditions. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thanks for that, Stephen. Do we have Louise Parkinson?
Mrs. Parkinson, you may need to unmute your microphone.
Do we have a Louise Parkinson wishing to speak on this application? Louise Parkinson?
It is, yes.
Yeah, you're the applicant for 80 Stanleyfield Lane. If you'd like to, right, smash it. If you'd like to make a statement for us, please, I'll allow you up to 4 minutes. Thank you.
Okay. Well, I've applied for a change of use to Class A5 as my intention is to open a family-run daytime food outlet Monday to Saturday selling hot and cold traditional and plant-based healthy food. I agree with comments that there are already too many unhealthy takeaways in the vicinity, My planned menu is to provide food based on the top 2 Slimming Club principles and traditional breakfasts and lunches. So there will be no deep fried food, no nasty odours, no late night openings, and no gangs of undesirables or vehicles coming and going at all hours. I expect my customers to come from online or telephone orders using our delivery service, or from the large footfall from local housing at the rear of the shop, and obviously passing trade, for which there is ample parking. With hindsight, it would have been prudent to include plans for a low road tie-in boundary to prevent pedestrians cutting across the shop front for safety reasons, but this could be something to consider in the future. The property has been empty for quite some time, therefore any business opening there will create more activity than of recent times. It's my opinion that a change of use would not lead to a further increase in traffic. This property has always been for commercial use. Next door, number 78, changed from retail to residential the month after I bought my property, and next door to them, number 76, changed from commercial to residential the year before. This has created further parking opportunities for my customers in the short stay bays opposite. Most of the neighbouring driveways have ample parking for several cars, so visitors would not. It shouldn't be an issue for them. When vehicles park in these bays, there is room for a bus and a back to pass quite easily. Lancashire Highways have approved my plans. Police road traffic speed camera vans sometimes park in there and wouldn't do so if it caused an obstruction. Accident reports in the area, absolutely not as some of the objections described. In respect of privacy for the neighbouring house, the original front door will be retained for the flat use, and by moving the shop door, it will afford better privacy for the adjoining property. The shop and kitchen areas do not share a party wall with next door, again reducing the risk of noise and odour. And on that subject, I've spoken with Environmental Health Officer Neil Martin, who agrees that my intended menu, a domestic extraction unit, would be adequate. A domestic extraction unit would mean no external noise or odour. Previously, Tony Ackrig was dealing with this application and he also agreed. In respect of housing, the proposed change of use will in no way affect housing, as the first floor 2-bedroom flat will be retained. There is plenty of neighbourhood housing in the area. There will be several part-time job opportunities for local residents, ideal for parents with school-aged children and for young adults looking for Saturday jobs. Finally, I hope that I've managed to alleviate residents' concerns and that my comments will be taken into account before the final decision is made.
Okay, thanks, Mrs. Parkinson. Thanks for that.
Thank you.
Okay, if you just stay, you could stay for the vote, which will take place a little later on. I have.
Yes, no problem.
Okay, I have a member. You're welcome. I have a member not on committee wishing to speak. That is Councillor Michael Green. Councillor Michael Green.
Yes, Chairman.
Thank you.
Good evening, Chairman. Good evening, councillors. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak, and thank you for Democratic Services for permitting that. I, of course, support the growth of businesses and new jobs wherever they may be. But I speak this evening as the County Councillor for the Farrington area and as a Farrington Parish Councillor as well. May I say that I was impressed by the applicant's presentation that you've just heard and the types of food that she may wish to serve in the future. However, I would obviously point out to members that if consent is granted, that consent goes with the land, not with the applicant. So whilst Mrs. Parkinson may have one intended use, that doesn't prevent her then selling the business to another applicant that comes with a different use completely in terms of fast food. And therefore, I would advise members to have due regard to the fact that they are agreeing to consent to a not food takeaway, whatever that may be. I support, Chairman, the condition from Environmental Health regarding the proposed opening hours, which makes eminent sense to safeguard the neighbouring residents. But my two concerns are in relation to highways and public health. With regard to highways, Stanleyfield Lane is not a country lane. It's a busy road, the main route between Leyland and Lostercole and on to Preston and the motorways, with significant speeding issues and highway safety concerns. The stretch of road, the highways officer has made reference to there having been 2 accidents at the immediate location. That is correct. But the stretch of road along there has had nearer to 20 accidents. That's why the parish council has long had it in their budget, a proposal to set funding to one side for a pedestrian crossing on that road, for instance. My concern, Chairman, is that traffic, if they park on the forecourt, would then be reversing onto that busy main road, and indeed, if they're going in the direction of Preston, reversing right across the highway, which causes concerns. There are clearly insufficient parking. Bristol Avenue is a very tight road, particularly close to the proposed takeaway. And the parking which does exist outside of the forecourt, which only has room for 2, maximum 3 vehicles, given the size of the drop curb. But the parking is across the road, and if people using the takeaway would go there, they're again having to cross that road where there is no crossing. So the issues of crossings or traffic islands or something should have been taken into account, in my view, before this proposal came forward. Finally, Chairman, I would wish to point out public health concerns. Chairman, as you may be aware, that Lancashire's Director of Public Health and Wellbeing has set out guidance that new A5 uses must be refused within any wards where more than 10% of reception-age children are classed as obese. This was on the basis of the government's aim to reduce the level of obesity down to 5%. This ward is Farrington East, and the obesity levels for children of reception age are above the 10% mark. And I would therefore ask you to take this fully into account before making your decision this evening. Thank you very much for your time, and I wish you well.
Thanks very much, Councillor Green. Thank you. Right, I will open this up, unless, Stephen, do you want to respond to any of Councillor Green's comments? Have LCC Highways issued any?
Yeah, just to say, while I appreciate what Councillor Green has said in terms of the public health, we have to reiterate that we have to assess this in the terms of the policies in the current local plan as they are today, and we don't have such a policy presently. We may well do in the future in the new local plan, but there isn't one as it stands currently. In terms of the highway side of things, we haven't had objection, as we've pointed out. But the other thing to bear in mind is this shop could open up again tomorrow as a cold food shop, or indeed any other type of shop, and generate quite considerable activity. So although we're looking at a situation of the premises being vacant at the moment, the lawful use is as an A1 shop. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thanks for that, Stephen. I'd like to bring in Councillor John Hesketh, and then Councillor Flannery, and then Councillor Keith Martin.
Hello, Chair. Can I
Right,
be
thank you,
included in that, please?
Right. Thank you.
I'm sorry.
Chairman.
Yes, Councillor Hesketh, I brought you in first, then Councillor Flannery, then Councillor Martin, and then Councillor Mrs. Green, if she wishes to come in after that. Okay, Councillor Hesketh.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Are we connecting? Thank you, Mr.
Yes,
Chairman.
you are connecting.
Right. We have to take this application as it is before us, Mr. Chairman. And as I see it, the application does actually make the site better. I think we should be thankful for that. The opening hours are, they're very, very reasonable as I see it. It has ample car parking and so forth. And if we are worried about cars parking in front of the shop, they don't necessarily to draw in the
I think we were having connection issues, Councillor Hesketh. Yeah, we're having connection issues, Councillor Hesketh. I'll go to Councillor. I'll just interrupt you for a moment, Councillor Hesketh, see if you get a better connection. I'd like to call Councillor James Flannery.
Thanks, Chair. Just some observations first. I thought the applicant's presentation, as Councillor Green said, was excellent. The applicants considered all aspects in terms of the local environment, and I think it'd be appropriate for us to mention during the, let's be fairly honest, the challenging business environment we're all in. It's great to see a small business setting up and creating employment and what looks like serving, good quality food. So well done to the applicant. And then looking at the officer's report on balance in terms of all the material considerations, everything's been covered and approved. So I'm moving to approve. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks for that, Councillor. Martin.
Thank you, Chair. I suppose I better declare a personal interest as someone who avoids eating meat. It doesn't work. But what I'd like to say is that I sort of disagree with the public health side of things, with the comments from others, because it's not that sort of food isn't sort of just eaten on the go sort of thing like that. So I'd support the application. And second, the proposal by Councillor Flannery.
Okay, thanks for that, Councillor Martin. Councillor Mrs. Mary Green, you were intimating you wanted to speak.
Yes, can you hear me, Chairman? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Councillor
Yes, we can hear you, Councillor Green.
Right, because to be honest with you, half of this meeting, all the pictures have disappeared. There's only my own picture that I can see. So I've not been able to see the applicants or anything, but it doesn't matter so long as you can hear me. Right, yeah. I must admit I've got one or two concerns in this application. Whereas I don't want it registering that I'm against business. I'm all for small businesses investing and doing well and giving staffing opportunities as well. But I'm quite aware of this area. I used to live in this area and I know the problems that there are. Bristol Avenue, for a start, all the length of Bristol Avenue up to the shopping community centre there. On both sides, cars park with two wheels on the pavements. So you've got a very narrow passage through the two cars. If there's two cars coming down either direction, you're going to struggle. So if people can't park near the shop, there's nowhere for them to park. On the shop front, there's only room for two, possibly three, but I doubt it, depending on the size of the vehicle. There's two spaces opposite the shop, as has been stated, but they're on the main road and on the opposite side. Now, I'm concerned in the fact that this shop to be open from 7:30 in the morning. Yes, it will cater for people all day. At lunchtime, people may call for sandwiches, etc. But potentially, I think the applicant is trying to aim, unless I'm incorrect, at the passing traffic going to work in the morning down this busy road, picking up sandwiches or hot breakfast in the morning, bacon sandwiches or whatever, on their way to work. Now, this well could be with that time of day, 7:30, it's probably not going to catch office workers. It's going to possibly be transport people, lorry drivers, people like that, that's picking up a quick breakfast on the way to work. So therefore, to have the food ready for 7:30, you're talking about the applicant starting cooking from about 6:30, 6:45, to have it all ready for 7:30. I'm very concerned with the fact that there's only going to be domestic extraction, because no matter what you say, if they're cooking an English breakfast, there's going to be bacon, eggs, a certain amount of smell of flies bound to emit from this premises. And I'm concerned about the apartment above and the house next door. Bearing in mind, before, the business wasn't a catering business, it was more of an office business. Also, there's going to be vans and heavier vehicles stopping on those spaces early in the morning on the main road there, which could cause problem with parking there, taking room up, affecting traffic, vehicles at front of people's houses, people getting in and out. Obviously, you've got a bigger footfall of traffic of people in and out of this premises than there was before. So even though I'm happy about a new business rather than an empty business, I've got quite a few concerns, and in which case, I'm sorry, but I'm going to have to propose refusal. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Mrs. Green. So you are proposing refusal?
Yes, thank you, Chairman.
Councillor Will Adams, would you like to come in?
Thank you, Chair. This is, for me anyway, personally, I think it's a very easy application. I think it's compliant in it seems every way. I think Mrs. Parkinson spoke really well in terms of her intentions for the property. I think it will bring a empty property at the moment back into use, which I think will be good for the area and good for jobs in the area as well. I don't see the link to public health, although I'm very happy to have a conversation with Councillor Green about that issue another time. For those reasons, Chair, I will move for approval.
Okay, well, we've had a proposal for approval and a seconder, but Councillor Mrs. Green has proposed refusal. So I need to find out, do we have a seconder for the refusal motion? Okay, so that motion's fallen. We'll go to the approval motion, if we may. Excuse me, I have a proposer and a seconder. I would now like to go to the vote, and I will start with Councillor Will Adams.
For approval, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Adams. Councillor Mal Donoghue.
Yes, approval.
Thanks, Councillor Mal Donoghue. Councillor James Flannery.
Approval, Chair.
Thanks, Councillor Flannery. Councillor Mrs. Mary Green.
Against, Chair.
Thanks, Councillor Green. Councillor John Hesketh.
Approval, Mr. Chairman.
Thanks, Councillor Hesketh. Councillor Cliff Hughes. Thanks, Councillor Hughes. Councillor Keith Martin.
And again, not to go against what I've seconded, I'll go for approval. Thank you.
Councillor Christine Melia.
Approval, Chair.
Thanks, Councillor Melia. Councillor David Shaw.
For.
Councillor Phil Smith.
Provided they don't serve any vegetarian sausage, I'm for.
Councillor Barry Yates, please. Sorry.
For, Chair.
Thanks, Councillor Yates, and I'm also in favour of the application. So, David, can you confirm the outcome of the vote, please?
Yes, Chair. There are 11 for, 1 against, so it's been approved that be a change of use of the ground floor from Class 1 to hot food takeaway Class 5, A5 rather.
Thanks very much for that, Dave. So that is approved. Good luck with your new business, Louise Parkinson. I hope you're very successful. Okay, that's the end of this evening's planning meeting. Thank you all very much for attending. Thanks for your patience. I hope it hasn't been too painful for you all. All right, good evening.